past 3:30 because also our panelists have scheduled meetings after this and some of them will come from a meeting, so we are packing it all in basically. But extend a hearty welcome on behalf of the IWPC MC to you, all of you, at this panel discussion, which talks about the impact of West Asia crisis on the Indian economy. And I welcome all of you, and I heartily welcome our panelists for giving up their time from very pressing assignments and so many issues that are happening in the world and in India, taking out the time to come and speak to us at IWPC on location, which is very grateful to you. So at the outset, let me introduce our very distinguished panelists. So we have with us Professor Arun Kumar, who's a retired professor in economics. He retired as Chakravarti Chair Professor at the Center of Economic Studies and Planning at JNU. And currently he is the Malcolm Adiseshiah Chair Professor in the Institute of Social Studies. He has written extensively on globalization, the impact of globalization on Indian society and on issues of public policy. And his work on India's black economy has been lauded as one of the it sets a benchmark. He has also talked about the GST and how flawed it is and how the impact that it has had on our common people, on the workforce. His concerns remain with the common people of the country and especially the unorganized sector, the impact of all the policies which has on them, which is the largest section, the unorganized sector. And so we yes, and his writings on demonetization and on the black economy have been extraordinary. So welcome, sir. We have with us Ambassador Anil Trigunayat, who's been an distinguished Indian diplomat serving in all the continents, Asia, Europe, America, Africa and Russia in various capacities serving India's national interests. He has served as ambassador in Jordan, Libya and Malta. He's an honorary advisor on the Middle East and North Africa in FICCI and BRICS Chamber of Commerce. And currently he is a distinguished fellow at the Vivekananda International Foundation. So welcome, sir. Dr. Sima Baidya, who is the assistant professor in the Gulf Studies program in the Center of West Asia Studies, School of International Studies, JNU. And her work has focused on Iran's foreign policy behavior and Persian Gulf politics, post-revolution Iran. And her work has, she's published and she's spoken at various forums. And I will just give you a quick idea of, I mean, it's very vast, her body of work, but pertaining to the topic today, there are many interesting things which stand out. At Jamia Millia Institute at the International Seminar in March 2010, she talked about the importance of home rules in Indo-Arab trade. And later at the University of Tehran 2010, she spoke about, again, an international seminar, energy as a binding force in the changing Iran-India relations. So all of this ties in absolutely well with our what we are seeking to address. And going back a little, in October 2008 at the international conference again at Jamia, she presented on interactions between India and the USA in Central and West Asia, the narrative of post-American world, where does India stand? So she's covered this for decades before this present crisis has erupted. And now coming to the topic today, it is clearly focused on the Indian economy in the context of the West Asia crisis. So we're going to stay focused on that. And I mean, even before the West Asia crisis erupted and its ramifications on the Indian economy, there have been signs of decline. For example, the rupee has been the worst performing currency even a year before the war, which has slipped behind many other currencies in the world. Investor sentiment has not been very favorable. Private investment and exports have plunged, and many investors have chosen safe havens, for their investment, which is like the flight of capital. So all these are very worrying signs. And plus, the data, of course, is there, but there are so many anecdotal incidents, including labor unrest, joblessness, some of it which is reported, some of it which is not, but especially in the unorganized sector, and the distress in the wage market, which we have seen even close to us in Gurgaon and Noida, and the flight of labor from manufacturing hubs like Surat. So there are many such incidents, and we are here to join the dots. The current crisis in West Asia has exposed the structural fault lines of Indian economy, and just to give you a broad idea on energy security, it has shown itself up as energy insecurity, fiscal strain, currency volatility, and supply chain disruptions. Now these are very academic, economic terms which many of us may or may not relate to, but it all boils down to increased inflation on prices because the Brent oil, the crude prices have gone up, and how it will impact the agriculture, the fertilizers, the chemicals with the Kharif season coming up, and many such, it is going to play itself out in various ways, and one of the ways which is maybe less talked about is that the Gulf area itself has the remittances from there are about 40% to here. So many families will be affected in case anything. It's a continuing crisis. We don't know where it is going. So I will stop here because it's very, very vast subject, and it is very, very crucial and important for all of us in India to try and understand it where we are going. So I also would like to say that Ambassador Anil Trigunayat has to leave early. So I would actually like to start with Professor. But maybe what we can do is have some broad comments, and so that he can. Yes, we could do that also. I thought it would be, because I would like you to speak at least for 15 minutes, if that is possible. So, yeah, so shall we start with, maybe you can say the opening lines and then you can take that. Is that fine? And I mean, I just leave it to you because you have each of you is such a fine pool, very elevated pool of enriched experience. So I leave it to you from your standpoint, your understanding, your wisdom, your experience. How do you see the situation? What can we in India expect, or what are we supposed to be prepared for in the coming weeks and months, no matter, I mean, which way it is going? That is also fluctuating, apart from the state of the war itself and the diplomatic efforts are ongoing. So what are we up against, and what do we in India, what do we have to look at and prepare for and know? So this is what I would like to do.
So thank you very much for inviting me here. I've been here because my wife is a member of the IWPC, so I've been here earlier as well. Now, coming to this crisis that we're all facing, we are already in a bit of a crisis, as you rightly said. There are a lot of things going on in 2025 because of which already there were problems. So whether it be the tariff situation that was affecting India, whether it be the Ukraine war that was going on, whether it be the difficulties in Afghanistan, in Iraq, and various other places. So what has come on 20th February on top of what was already going on? And as you rightly pointed out, foreign exchange was going out, FDI was actually net negative from October, or very small. Foreign portfolio investment was going on from 2024 September. So there were things that were happening already in the economy, which was weakening the economy. There's also the problem that our unorganized sector has been facing a crisis since demonetization. It was hit very badly by demonetization, the next year by the GST, which was structurally faulty, and then next year it was hit by the non-banking finance company crisis that came. So 2016, 2017, 2018, and then 2020, the pandemic came, and again it hit the unorganized sector very hard. But then, the Ukraine war also hit it. So the unorganized sector has been in a bit of a crisis right through. And what this is doing is again hitting the unorganized sector very hard. So what is it that's going on? That's what you want us to explain. The first point is that this is a supply shock which has come. This is a new thing. We did not have a supply shock. What is a supply shock? Energy is short. Because 20% of the world energy was coming out of the Strait of Hormuz, and as soon as the war started, that Strait of Hormuz closed. So, roughly 30% of the energy used in the world is in the form of oil and gas. So, 20% shortage of 30% means 6% shortage of energy in the world, because it wasn't coming out. Now, you can make up some of it. You can use the east-west line in Saudi Arabia, you can take out to the Red Sea. Russian oil on the high seas could be got, Iranian oil could be got, etc. But that cannot take care of all of it. 20% shortage, maybe you can take care of 4-5%. But still, I think about 13-14% shortage was there. So in other words, energy is short. Now why is energy important? Because to produce anything you need energy. To distribute anything you need energy. To consume anything you need energy. When you want to cook at home, when you want to transport anything, you need energy. Everything in the economy, that's what we say, production, consumption, and distribution, all of them require energy. And when energy is short, that means there is a constraint on the economy, and the economy cannot produce what it was producing earlier. So therefore, an energy shock means that the entire economy is affected. Now there are two things. One is energy shock. Second is because energy is short in the world, the energy prices are gone up. So Brent crude and various other things, which are the benchmark, they have all gone up by about 50%. So when energy becomes expensive, then everything that you produce using energy also becomes expensive. So therefore there is an inflation that takes place. But there is yet another thing that's very important about crude oil, and that is it has a lot of chemicals in it. Helium comes out of it, sulfur comes out of it, The chemicals that are needed to produce fertilizer comes out of it, The chemicals that are needed to produce medicines, pharmaceuticals, that comes out of it, Plastics come out of it, Packaging material comes out of it. So in other words, you have a shortage not just of food, but you have a shortage of a variety of inputs into various things. And therefore production of various other things, like for instance, if fertilizer is short, and why is fertilizer short? Because naphtha is short. And why? Because from West Asia, a large amount of fertilizer was coming. So therefore fertilizer shortage is here, which will affect your food production. And this is a year of super El Nino. Super El Nino is coming in the month of July to August, which means as it is you have a drought, you have shortage of fertilizer, and therefore your food production is going to be affected. Then various other things, if you don't have packaging material, then you can't transport things, you can't sell things, and therefore that creates a problem. So therefore there is a triple shock. Energy shortage, price of energy going up, and various chemicals that are inputs into various things that are going up. So therefore, this is a supply shock which is leading to your balance of payment problem also. Why? Because your import of energy is more expensive, so you are spending more on foreign exchange for that. On the other hand, to West Asia, we used to sell 16% of our exports. Now that 16% is not going there, or much less is going there. So exports have come down. Secondly, in the world, prices are going up. So therefore, demand will go down, and therefore our exports to the rest of the world will also go down. So on the one hand, exports go down. On the other hand, your imports go up. So therefore, your foreign exchange will start going out, and that's where your foreign exchange reserves start coming down. Now, seeing the situation, what happens is, if foreign investors, then they begin to pull out money from the economy. Because when the rupee goes down, if they pull out their money today, they get more rupees, if they pull it out tomorrow, they get less rupees, And that's why the foreign exchange outflow increases, because foreign direct investment goes down, foreign portfolio investment also, it was already leaving since September 2024, that also starts going out. So therefore you have an impact. Then the non-resident Indians who have deposits in India, they also begin to pull out, because if they pull out today, they get more dollars than if they pull out tomorrow. Then the exporters, they start not bringing back the proceeds. Because if they don't bring back the proceeds today and they bring it back tomorrow, they get more rupees. So therefore, again, foreign exchange is not coming in. Importers start importing more, because today it will be cheaper than tomorrow. Therefore, importers are importing more. Exporters are not bringing back the proceeds. So that also creates a problem. And then, as was rightly pointed out, we have 1 crore Indians in the Gulf area. They send remittances. Now, at the moment, remittances are not affected, but as their jobs go, as they return to India, that remittance will also go down, and remittance is a big thing that we have. So therefore, multiple reasons why foreign exchange outflow is there, and why the rupee therefore is declining. It's a vicious cycle, where the rupee is declining, the foreign exchange is going out, and that is affecting the stock market also, the instability in the stock market. And therefore, the investment climate in India has gone down. The investment climate in India was very weak as it is, and that's why the government is complaining that the private sector is not investing more. They say the public sector investment is increased, but why is the private sector not increasing investment? The private sector says, unless demand is there, we will not invest more. And why is demand short? Because inequality in India is very high. When you have high inequality, then from the bottom, the unorganized sector, the 94% whose incomes are not there, they demand less. And when demand comes down, and as the RBI's data shows, RBI brings out the data on capacity utilization, that capacity utilization shows that in India, the capacity utilization of organized sector has been hovering between 70 and 75%. Now, unless capacity utilization goes to 85, 90, investors will not invest more. And that is why the investment by the private sector has been tepid. It is not going up, it was much higher earlier, it hasn't been going up since the time of demonetization. So capacity utilization being low, organized sector not investing, and that's why foreign direct investment will also not come, because the capacity utilization is low. Indian investors are not investing much, then why would foreign investors come? There's yet another factor why foreign capital is going out, and that is that the US markets are doing very well. The 7 companies, the 10 companies, they have shot up in the last 2 years. Ever since ChatGPT 4 came, they have really shot up. So the return in the market in the US is very high. Whereas in India, the return has gone down in dollar terms. Because suppose you're getting 10% return, and your rupee is devalued by 5%, and your return is only 5%. If you're getting 15% and the devaluation is 10%, then you're getting only 5%. So the Indian return in dollar terms has come back, because the rupee has been devalued. And that is why foreign portfolio investment is going out, and foreign direct investment is also not in the net. Gross foreign direct investment is being high, but in the net it is not high. Why? Because people from India are taking capital out of the country. The people who invested earlier in the Indian market, they have taken capital out. So the question is, why are they taking it out? So in other words, I'll let you speak, because I can come back here. So this crisis is affecting your rupee value, it's affecting investment, it's affecting prices, it is affecting production. So all of them. And unfortunately, what we did not do, we export 35% of our refined product to Europe, to our private refineries like Reliance and Baidya, etc. So the shortage of crude becomes greater. About roughly, if you look at the Ministry of Commerce data, then roughly in March and April, 35% less crude came. And of the amount that came, we exported 35%. So in other words, we were only using 30% of the crude that would have been available for internal use. And that's why my argument is that very likely our refineries have exhausted most of the stocks. Because refineries keep 1 week of crude. They don't keep a lot of it, because it's coming in and being utilized, coming in and utilized. So 1 week plus we have a strategic reserve of 9.5 days, so that's 16.5 days. And if your shortage is 30%, then you can make that stock last for about 50 days. Beyond 50 days, it becomes more difficult. So that's why my suspicion is that our stocks of food and stocks of refined product are quite low. And that's why I think the government is in a bit of trouble. And that's why I think the Prime Minister came out, but he came 73 days late. He should have stopped the export of these items right in the first week of March, about 82 countries took steps in the first week of March itself to actually preserve their foreign exchange, to preserve their food, etc. We did not even stop the liberalized remittance scheme, so which $29 billion flow out every year. We could have stopped the liberalized remittance scheme or at least curtailed it, not allowed to, we would have saved some foreign exchange. Now the Prime Minister has therefore said we should have austerity and import substitution. There are two things that the Prime Minister's package is. Import substitution, that means we start producing here rather than getting things from outside, curtail our consumption board. But the point is, who is it who can sacrifice? The bottom 95% has nothing to sacrifice. They are at a really pitiful level. They have nothing to sacrifice. They don't buy gold, they don't work wrong. It's the top 5%, and bulk of their consumption is to the black economy, to the black economy. And the flight of capital is also to the black economy. There are 90 tax savings in which the money is taken out of the country. Now these 5% are the people who are the rulers. They are not going to curb themselves. The businessmen are not going to curb themselves as long as the politicians don't curb themselves. So the black economy is the real, so to say, the real crisis point. If you could check the black income generation, and which the politicians can check, then your foreign exchange would preserve, your luxury item consumption would be less, etc. etc. So the Prime Minister came 73 days late and he did not agree to the 5%. He did not stop the corruption and the various other things that were being done. The wastage that is there in the government, the wastage that is there in the corporate sector, people have appealed to that. But appealing in general to the 95% makes no sense. So I can come back later.
Please, thank you so much.
Namaskar, good afternoon. It's always a pleasure to come back to the IWPC and listening to the distinguished professor who been interacting more on the television channels and between the two professors, so they know about economics much better than I do or extrapolate what he said. But from the commonsensical point of view, obviously, we are in trouble, like any other rights in the world, including the United States. I mean, we are not the only ones, but everybody is. For 47 years, the world had hoped that there will be no direct war or conflict between Iran and Israel. It was prevented because until now, until last year, the United States kept the lid over the Israeli ambitions. And nowadays we have heard that most of the presidents or former secretaries of state have come out and clearly said that the Israelis have always come to them and wanted to take the Iranians out. But the reason is the impact that this type of an event happening is something that the whole world really shuddered. And that it's not something that the world is happening in some remote area. For India, West Asia has an existential threat. Very often I say that it is even more important than the religion of the world. Because, as I say, there are 4 E's that are extremely important and we depend on. The first E is the energy and fertilizer security. Food security directly combined with that sense. So we are importing about 50% of our requirements from the region. We have diversified. We import now from about 40 countries. We are back to importing from Russia. Even the Americans themselves have been under extension of 1 month. During this period, we bought about 5 million barrels from the Iranians, including one. And we are now going as far as Brazil and Argentina to get from them. So, but as Professor mentioned, that these are long-term arrangements. So that's a lesson for India that we need to diversify even away from the Middle East. Last time when we started importing from Russia, we were really forced into it because of the Russian war and the sanctions going on. It was not necessarily by choice, because most of these Middle Eastern countries were forced by the Europeans and the Americans to develop, to send it to them basically. And it was the expense of India. So that's something. Secondly, the Russians obviously were giving us oil at a much more discounted. And as Professor mentioned, it has cyclical impact on everything. I remember I was at the CII conference in south of India, where the CEO, the very first week, people you started saying, that many of the factories that were based, especially in the private sector, on the LNG supply, and it's not functioning. Immediately industrial diesel price went up by 20% in the very first weeks. So obviously the input cost has increased, which is naturally going to impact on the, and that's what we are all facing. Prime Minister has himself come out and told the world that what to Indians, that what needs to be done, and perhaps more policy measures are required. But it is also a cumulative impact of reminding the four black swan events. The first one obviously was the pandemic, which impacted on your food security, your health, on your economy, climate, everything was impacted. And then the world started looking at that. While the whole impact on the economy was not yet taken out, we had Russia-Ukraine war. The Russia-Ukraine war created a very new dynamic, which I have referred to as 4Fs, the weaponization of financial instruments by the Americans and the West, which resulted in the Russians weaponizing the food, fertilizer, and fuel. Now that all is impacting only the developing world. I mean, when we talk about 85%, let's say the professor was saying that 85% or 95% Indians would have the capacity there. So 95% of the rest of the countries in the developing world are exactly in the same situation. So anything that happens impacts on them in a very great manner. So this is something that, while that was going on, we started having trouble in the Middle East. You have the Gaza war that has started, it's not ended as yet. Then it got combined, Iranians got pushed into it. And last June we have seen what happened, and then this time also. It was pretty much expected that this would take place under President Trump, because President Trump had openly sided with Israel. Therefore, taking away that caveat that the Americans were trying to balance for their own reasons. They have their own reasons, because United States today is the largest producer of supplier of Europe. They are competitors to that extent. In many ways, their strategic importance in the Middle East may have been reduced, because they would focus more on the US. But they have been dragged into the Eurasian war and back into the Middle East war, and now they are trying to take up the day US against China. We have seen what happened in President Trump's visit to China and the G2 kind of thematics that is proposed. So all these have implications on us as well. And this particular war, in my view, which is going on, has also been driven by, let's say, 4 ends. The first is munitions. This got to stop because the munition supply essentially has a limitation. No country keeps it for more than 6 weeks or 8 weeks or more. And now the wars are continuing for years together, especially for this. Second is markets. We have seen that how the markets have been played out in this. And third one, of course, is the effects of oils. Strait of Hormuz, or now they are threatening to close the Libya and Malta, now the Suez that way. So all these will have a very major impact on the economy going forward, which has been mentioned by the President. And last one, of course, is the madness. So we don't know how the madness will stop. Either it is that of the Israelis, Americans, or the Iranians. All of them are combined with that. So everybody is saying they retaliate to exercise that. But the economies of the Gulf countries are taking a big hit. And that also has a direct implication for us. For example, attacking on the Qatar gas with the Sina was something that took away almost 20% of the total LNG or the gas supplies from them when they attacked on South Parsi. Now they, according to their own estimates, even if war stops tomorrow, then it will take about 6 to 8 months minimum, for 2 years, for the Qataris to be able to supply the gas. And we have signed an agreement for $28 billion with the Qataris for supply for long term. So in most of these countries, we have long-term supply agreements which is going to be costly. No doubt there are alternatives are being found by all these countries, including India is now once again looking at one of these pipelines which I remember in the 1990s we used to talk about gas pipeline from Iran, Oman into India. Now we should have done this subsea pipeline long back, but for some reason it did not work out. But today once again we are talking about it. within the context of the I2U2 or the IMAC corridor, whatever, India and UAE have been working on these undersea pipelines and the direct port connectivity through Fujairah and other roads in the UAE, which will be outside the Strait of Hormuz. With Oman, we have the Diplomat port. So we have to start working on this, but these are all going to take time to materialize. So in the short term, we have probably a painful time, and that painful time must be addressed through various policy measures which the government is taking without. But there are some things that are extraneous factors, and it is not necessarily the doing of internal. But I hope that the Indian private sector, which has been investing much less, will bite the bait and try to bail out India in that sense, because the foreigners will come when you have your own investments going on. The problem is that the Indian investments in India, according to what as was mentioned, that even though we got the highest, I think the FDI, if we were to just take the gross for 96 billion or something, we said, the net is really minuscule. So that is something that needs to be taken care of. Of course, we have to go out to the world. I think the globalized economy is extremely important for us to have stakes, because they could also be part of the supply chains. It's not that since India is wanting to become a player in the supply chains, it's important to have your companies taking over big projects, undertaking big projects in those countries. And that's how a major country plays the role. It's not by restricting your own enterprise. So it's important to go out and do that. But then there are times, and I think that now that the more folks are in that sense of the term, and then perhaps we will be able to take care of that situation without undergoing a major crisis.
Thank you so much. Now I request Dr. Baidya to say a word. You can either stick to a smaller version and then expand on it because he needs to leave. I'll leave that to you.
Thank you. Thank you for organizing this panel discussion, and thank you for inviting me. I would like to focus first on Asst crisis. Because of my background, I teach Iran, and my CV on my ANU's website is 14 years old. Anyway, I teach Iran, so I want to focus a little bit on West Asian crisis, because whatever we have been facing in India, it is because of the crisis. Once this crisis is not there, and slowly and steadily, and we will again back to earlier scenario. I'm not telling that we don't have any challenges, economic challenges. I'm not saying that. Now, coming to this West Asian crisis, who created the crisis? And now, time and again we keep hearing that negotiations going on, it depends on on Iran, what Iran says, it depends on Iran's nuclear program and all this. What was happening exactly before 28th February? This year, negotiation was going on, and the negotiation, these other parties, they were there, Utrecht was there, Krishna was there, and Omani foreign minister was there. Actually, on 27th February, there was a breakthrough. And Omani foreign minister, he gave the interview. See, this interview is there, 20-minute interview. It's not just a statement. This interviewer asked him that, how much time did you take? What is the scenario? First he says that, I said that 3 months. Then I think he can give a thought that, no, it's too much time. We don't have that much time. But she did not tell that, but you can say, think and understand from the body language. Then, Omani foreign minister told that you can have a dinner tomorrow. Actually, on 20th April, I was watching that interview. Then I got the news that Iran was attacked. What was the provocation? There was no provocation. Very mind-blowing from her, from Netanyahu, that preemptive war. What is preemptive many people are telling about this nuclear program. Iran is a signatory of NPT. Iran signed the NPT in 1968 and it was ratified in 1970. India is not a signatory of NPT. Now, this Iranian nuclear program is, some years back, I was reading one article from one Italian journalist, who should be named, this Giancarlo Mola. This journalist compared Iranian nuclear program is like La Terra di Penelope, like Penelope's way. It is like a work, it will never be completed. You start doing this, thinking that it will be completed, again you undo the things, again you start from this. This is the perfect example. Okay. When nuclear deal was signed in 2015, why US withdrew from it in 2018? And now many journalists, they are saying that it is going to happen. It's a more or less same kind of a thing. Now it's like this. What we keep hearing from Israel, that suddenly something had happened this year in February. You check this, video statement, Netanyahu's video statement. 1996, he said the same thing. It's 30 years down the line, he was telling the same thing. 130 years down the line, you have to check that when he was Prime Minister, then who was US President? He did not get a chance. Now he thought that, okay, this is the most opportune moment. If nuclear deal, again, this, there is a breakthrough. And the Omani foreign minister very clearly, very categorically said that Iran accepted the deal in such a manner which Iran has never accepted. Okay? And then this thing had happened. Another analyst, Marwan Bisara, also he said that if there would have been a breakthrough, then maybe that attack would not have been there. But there was a breakthrough, then this attack was absolutely necessary. And we talk about this, that everything is fair in love and war. No, everything is not fair in love and war. Okay? It's the attack on Iran is certainly violated in your conviction. And another thing that it has been projected in the case of Iran, that Iran is a threat. Okay? Iran is a threat in the region, and as well as in and around neighboring countries, Iran is a threat. Alright, Iran is a threat. In French, there is a phrase, c'est logique. Okay? Let's see that whether it passed through that phrase. Until some years, okay? You are a journalist, you know about this. 1948, 1956, 1967, 1973, then 1991, in 2003. You know the importance of all this, what happened in West Asia, where Iran was involved or not. So on what ground Iran is a threat, that I would also like to know, because I teach Iran, so I would like to know. If Iran is a threat, I have to know Iran is a threat. But if Iran is not a threat, then I don't know. Okay. Then another thing is going on in case of Iran. What earlier also other philosophers they say, but Arun, he said this, he talked about framing. It's a framing analysis. It's like a frame. It's like a frame. Whatever I'm showing to you, you just see pattern. You don't see beyond this frame. In case of Iran is also like this. In India, why we are having many misunderstanding in spite of the fact that Indian people are very fond of Iran. Okay? Very fond of Iran, and I was so surprised to see that Kashmiri people, they were just, they were giving their gold and everything. Hardly I have heard about it during independence time. I have heard about it. And then now we say this, why Indian people are very fond about Iran, when we are having a different, many times, many misunderstandings very, very important to understand Iran. Why I am telling all these things? It's not just because I teach Iran, so I have to tell this. Not any other things. Not like that. Because it depends on that, if Trump doesn't understand Iranian political mind, he won't be able to, clinch the deal as simple as that. When before this attack or the war started, American intelligence said something else. Okay? Trump completely ignored it, and then he understood it was a disaster. Okay? It was a terrible miscalculation. And after that, he wanted to get out of it. He was not able to get out of it. As a result of that, what is happening in the other countries which are not involved, they are facing problems, including India. It's not that India was directly involved, India was nowhere, okay? But like any other countries, okay, India also has been facing this problem. Now, when this war started, Trump's campaign, Twitter, video, you can see, the Trump said that he can imagine that Iran can do this thing. Okay? In IR theory, this is what we call this rocking the boat strategy. Okay? We are in the same boat, so if you rock the boat, everybody's existence is at stake. Okay? So Iran has been doing this. Okay? And another thing also, Iran has been saying this not because of war. This year's war, Iran is against American base or any foreign country's base in the soil of this region. Iran has been saying this for decades. So this thing, and it is a complete, underestimation, I must say. If Netanyahu was prepared, has been preparing for this war for more than 30 years, I must say so is Iran. Okay. Otherwise, many people said, those who are not very much aware of Iranian politics and many things, they said that it's very difficult. Iran is very, big, that within weeks, it will be destroyed. It's not like that. Okay. And those who are following Iranian politics, they said no, it is going to be another Vietnam for Trump. Just wait and watch. Another thing I must say that you all know journalists, okay? Do visit the place, and then you report, because this is lived experience is very, very important. Okay? When you see this, then you will understand. Okay, this country is like this. I thought this country would be, something. There is something different. Okay, like philosopher Morty, he says that the phenomenology of perception, the lived experience. When you have lived experience, you have a different perception. In case of Iran, exactly it is happening. When this peak of it was like a wave. It was happening in case of Iran. So in case of Iran, when people started supporting and following so-called crown prince, though people who protested about this crown prince, king and then crown, okay? Then in that case, it is like this. When people wanting that person back, that crown is back, okay? And this regime change and whatever, why can't people check the female literacy rate right now in the Islamic Republic of Iran and during Shah's period, which will be our choice. Now, coming to this, yes, sorry, India. Sure.
And then we can have a common thing to say when we need to ask when he goes. So since Ambassador Trigunayat has to leave in a little bit, we have a few precious moments with all three panelists. So I was just thinking that we can have a brief Q&A. Anything that you want to ask all of them, but especially the person who is to leave and he's kindly consented to extend it by 10 minutes. Is that okay? Is that okay? Maybe I can hand it to my colleague, Shobna and Sima.
Sam is going to oblige us.
Hi friends, अभी अपने प्रोफेसर और एम्बेसडर इनके काफ़ी मेहनत करना भी कुछ सुना। अभी हम लोग पहले ग्रुप कमीशन फॉर्म के संभालना हम लोग एम्बेसडर से रिक्वेस्ट करेंगे वो प्रीवियस सेशन में, हालांकि हमारा एक प्रोटोकॉल होता है तो IWPC मेंबर्स फॉर्म पहले मौका देता है, लेकिन क्योंकि एम्बेसडर ट्रिग्नायत के पास टाइम कम है तो हम ऐसा करेंगे 2 इनके ले लेंगे, पहले IWPC के और फिर एक या 2 आपको। So first question,
Okay, you and
So, good afternoon, I am Shikha Sanaria, I work with India Abroad and I cover MA. Since the main subject focus is economy, I really want to ask you about this latest report about the RBI selling off our gold assets, to ensure that our foreign currency assets are, the effect on them is sort of laid off. What do you make of it? The government has come out with a very strong clarification stating that none of this has happened, but it's a Bloomberg report. Tell me your thoughts about it. Both Ambassador and Professor Arun Kumar can share their thoughts.
maybe you can give it to Sindhu and they can take 2 questions. Please.
I'm Sima Bhattacharya. This is a question for Ambassador Trigunayat. Just wanted to understand, what will it take, and Professor Arun Kumar, of course, what will it take for foreign investors to come back to the country, given the dismal scenario on all fronts in terms of the exchange rate, in terms of the energy crisis, in terms of the fact that the geopolitical crisis right now doesn't seem to be ending anytime soon. How can we get investors back to the country, and specifically for Professor Arun Kumar, how do we tackle the existing and rising inflation?
Just give that. Let's go back.
They were actually saying a tool from IWPC. So I was interested in you spoke about the subsea pipeline between Iran and Oman and India. But considering the fact that Iran is always under sanctions, how viable will this be as a bridge?
सर मैंने वैसे तो अरुण जी से पूछ लिया था सर, क्या भारत सरकार के डेटा पर विश्वास किया जा सकता है जो 1 लाख करोड़ का सोना बेचा, ब्लूमबर्ग में छपाया? भारत सरकार के डेटा अलग कुछ कहते हैं और असल में कुछ और होता है।
हम लोग अपने एक मेल करीब को मौका देते हैं।
क्या कह रही हो?
Preeti is sorry, we're all women here.
So I would want you to tell us 2 or 3 reasons, or points where you think our diplomacy has gone wrong as far as whether it is Israel or US or even in this West Asia crisis, maybe Iran for that. Thank you.
Well, madam, the question about gold and उन्होंने भी पूछा पीछे से सोने के बारे में। देखिए, ये सरकार ही बता सकती है इसका जवाब कि क्या हुआ है असलियत में, लेकिन जो हमने खबरें पढ़ी हैं उसमें ये फेक न्यूज़ है। तो एक बात मैं बता दूँ, इस वॉर के बारे में 90% इंफॉर्मेशन जो बाहर आ रही है वो सब डिसइंफॉर्मेशन कैंपेन्स। Grey zone warfare and cyber warfare in this particular war have been extremely accentuated. और ये चीज़ आप देखेंगे कि हमारे चैनल्स के ऊपर भी इधर उधर जब कभी जाते हैं तो लोग जनरली वेस्टर्न मीडिया का सारा देख करके उसके हिसाब से ही रिएक्ट करते हैं और उसी को रिपोर्ट बनाते हैं। तो बहुत ज़्यादा डिसइंफॉर्मेशन कैंपेन है जिसके बाद मुश्किल होता है कि सच क्या है कितना है। 1 मिनट में आप कुछ और बात करेंगे, दूसरे मिनट कुछ और करेंगे। प्रेसिडेंट ट्रम्प जो मेन पॉलिसीज बनाते हैं वो भी अपना ट्रूथ सोशल पे हर रोज़ बदल देते हैं। तो इस तरह की सिचुएशन में मैं नहीं समझता कि इस वक्त भारत जिसने खरीदा है इतना गोल्ड, इस मैक्सिमम गोल्ड हमने बाहर से अंदर मंगाया है और परचेज भी किया है, तो ऐसा मुझे नहीं लगता है कि हम जो है गोल्ड को बेचेंगे इस वक्त में। ऐसी सिचुएशन तो अभी आई नहीं है मेरे ख्याल से देश में, और प्रोसेस आप ज़्यादा जहाँ तक फॉरेन इन्वेस्टर्स की बात है, देखिए 2 चीज़ें हैं। फॉरेन इन्वेस्टमेंट उन जगहों में जाता है जहाँ पे कॉम्पिटिटिव एडवांटेज जाता है। इंडिया में कॉम्पिटिटिव एडवांटेज बढ़ रहा है धीरे धीरे, इसीलिए जो एक्चुअली द रियल फिगर ऑफ इन्वेस्टमेंट काफ़ी हाई है, $96 बिलियन नॉट अ जोक। तो इट हैज बीन अ बिग डिस्टेंस, बट एट द सेम टाइम आपके खुद के इन्वेस्टर्स जो बहुत ज़्यादा बाहर जा रहे हैं, तो आप एक फिगर बना सकते हैं कि नेट इन्वेस्टमेंट इन टर्म्स ऑफ $US अगर आप लें तो वो ज़्यादा होगा। तो एक तो चीज़ ये हमें करनी पड़ेगी कि देखिए आपको ये 70-80 कंट्रीज के अंदर में इन्वेस्टमेंट जाता है। मैक्सिमम फॉरेन डायरेक्ट इन्वेस्टमेंट रोटेट्स अमंग दी OECD कंट्रीज, मैक्सिमम नंबर। तो हमें उस चीज़ को बनाना है कि किस तरह से आप ज़्यादा कर सकते हैं। जैसे चाइना प्लस वाली लोगों की पॉलिसी थी, उसमें भी काफ़ी कंट्रीज आसियान कंट्रीज थी, उन्होंने उसका बेनिफिट उठाया, हमने थोड़ा कम उठाया, और ये सब कंपनीज और ये इस तरह की कंपनीज यहाँ पर आई। तो ये राइट टाइम अगर आप उससे पूछेंगे भी फॉरेन इन्वेस्टमेंट इस सिचुएशन में जहाँ पे एवरीबॉडी इज ट्राइंग टू ब्रेस फॉर द मार्केट एंड फॉर देयर ओन स्ट्रेटेजिक स्पेस, whether it is companies or countries, I don't think this will be very possible at this stage to try to launch a campaign to attract more companies. But I'm quite sure they can. As far as subsea cables are concerned, like that is the same thing like data cables. Now the Iranians have also threatened that if more attacks continue, we'll cut down the subsea cables. Now in Iran, Madam knows much better, but whatever I know little is that in Iran also today there is no single point of decision maker. That is also a problem. IRGC on its own road, nobody has seen Mustafa, the new Supreme Leader, presidents. There were 2 days ago there was a news that President has up to frustration resigned. Dr. Adiseshiah, which was retracted later on. The only person who's consistent is actually the foreign minister, who's been seen and who's but perception-wise, Iran has definitely won this war, irrespective, because they have earned more sympathy and they have been able to do things and stand up to the giant. And not one, but the 2 of them. Israel is the giant of the Middle East, and US, of course, is, and against the 2 nuclear powers. So that's a very important differentiation, which also shows that the civilizational powers have the kind of resilience which not many countries in the West can appreciate. And one thing for all I want to tell you is that none of the superpowers in the 20th or 21st century have won a single war. Whether it is China, United States or Soviet Union, everywhere. We have seen what I'm talking about. As far as diplomacy is concerned, diplomacy is the art of possible. It's not the art of impossible. What you try to do is minimize the impact. Now, in a way, my only point of difference is in this is that we have tried to do the best out of worst situation. Because today this war which is taking place is among all our strategic partners. Israel is our strategic partner, Iran is our strategic partner, America is our global comprehensive strategic partner. So think about it from this point of view. The countries that have been subsequently impacted, which are like Gulf countries, they have been primary pivot of our West Asia policy. We have all comprehensive strategic partners, whether it's UAE, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Oman, all these countries. So you can imagine in that kind of a situation, if you are in that position, what kind of a policy would you take? What you will do is, which is what India is doing, our policy essentially, and I'm not talking for the government will talk for itself and they have issued a lot of clarifications, is in my view essentially driven by 4 Ds, which is dialogue, diplomacy, de-hyphenation and de-escalation. Because that serves your national interest. And the basic and fundamental objective of any foreign policy is to serve your national interest. And these are not ordinary times, they are extraordinary times in which you have to get the maximum money. If you did not have good relations with Iran in the early days and later on, you would not be able to get 10 or 15 of your ships out and continue to have some kind of supply going on. Your security is extremely important. So you continue to depend on that. Because you can't depend on superpowers. That is something we have to understand and learn. That is going to be always for them, you are a part of the chess game. But the middle powers are the ones in which we can find some kind of modus and closer to our vision. So that is very important. That's what precisely India is trying. Now we will fought on such things that when the Iranian leader was killed, we could have probably condoled. I mean, I would not have gone into condemnation, but definitely it was possible to condole the death of the which we did later on. But that's what we did. But I have a feeling that had they carried out some kind of ceremony for later on in the country, funeral or whatever, India would have definitely sent the signal. Because our relationship with Iran is also very, very, I must say, strong relationship. It has come with a lot of support. And a lot of this has not because it's a G2G. India, as far as foreign policy, does not recognize unilateral sanctions by anybody. But at the same time, companies that are working not only in Iran but in different parts of the world have to look at the global environment. Because there are global companies that are working. We are working a while now. All our media will come. There are parts of sanctions. We will get cut off from the system. All these companies will suffer. So that has been their contribution in the main sense. We have continued to get waivers wherever it was possible diplomatically. But latest one just expired on Chahar and 26 for waiver. So we are still continuing with that. But we have found some kind of a viability on Chahar as well. Because that is the highly strategic point for us. Not only for relationship with Iran, but also with Afghanistan and well Central Asia. And all connectivity projects, IWPC and others. The situation is not that easy. It's a very difficult situation in which you have to calibrate your choices. Because everybody is looking at what has the Prime Minister done. He has spoken every leader not once, twice, thrice. Foreign Minister has been in concert with all the leaders. They have come and been here, talked about, we have been regularly speaking to them. So that's why, that's how we do it. We have not done a boisterous kind of a diplomacy or tried to mediate, we don't like the word mediation ourselves. So there's no question of that. But through pipe diplomacy, also you can try to effect de-escalation. And that's what India is trying. Next time I'll come. I thought it was starting with me. That's why.
Sir, I'm Amit Sen. I work for the Hindu Business Time. Just taking this discussion on diplomacy forward. So, as you said that there are some observations that India could have condoled the supreme leaders with earlier. But not just that. So, we have also seen India criticizing Iran's attack on other countries of West Asia and not being so critical of attacks on Iran and things like that. But at that time, we had no idea that this war would last so long. So now, given the fact that the war is going on, we don't know when it's going to end, and all of you have said that the alternative routes that will take a very long time to work out. So, do you think it is time that we should, rework our diplomatic strategy and maybe is it too late to be, trying to be nicer to Iran so that it could permit more of our ships to pass through Hormuz as it is allowing China, or do you think that the US, the presence of US and Israel could spoil that for us?
Madam, this is very true. I think why you are doing this, we are not moving in a moralistic world. We know that the whole world knows that I have written many times on this, that this was the Americans and President Trump was basically played into getting into this war. That is also a fact. He knows it because From day one, every second day you are changing your opinion, your views about the war, your objectives are not clear. And whenever the war objectives are lined up, the most important thing is the exit strategy. There was no exit strategy. That's why they are looking for off-ramp. What they have done in order to take less of, and I mentioned for divisions of the forums, and that's extremely important. So they have also been exhausted everywhere. So that's why they have to call for this kind of a ceasefire to remove from all over, and that's an issue. But as far as your question is concerned, is about policy. We are nice to Iran, but we are not nice to Iran.
Nicer, I said nicer.
No.
It would be nicer.
We have been, the way we have fully supported them, that's not okay, we are not supporting them. But what we have opposed, two things. One is that we do not support any toll or stopping of these type of problems. Our foreign policy clearly is predicated on the basis of freedom of navigation. Plus, ease of navigation is extremely important for India. We are in resident power in the Indian Ocean. We have already deployed a lot of our naval ships, essentially to protect our shipping and bring our people back to the system. Iranians understand that. When one of the ships was sunk by the Americans, you remember, India was the one who tried to help them. And then we saved one of the ships in Kochi and all the people we sent back. They were very happy with that. The Iranians do understand. And diplomacy does not mean that in times of crisis you burn all your boats with A country or B country. Idea is to take out the best out of the worst situation. And that's what we are trying to do, because this is directly impacting. Whatever is happening in the Middle East is of critical importance for India. It has always been, the government of India has always understood, and let us give it credit to this government that during the last 14-15 years, or let's say from 2008 onwards, I was involved myself in the visits of the Prime Minister and all that from 2008. We have changed our tracks from a transactional diplomacy or partnership to strategic partnership with most of these countries, including with Iran. So Iran will remain it is a very, very important partner, very important country. And when this war is over, Madam can tell better, Iran has already come out as very strong. But Iran will have a very great difficulty in adjusting to the regional architecture. It will have to come up with a lot of confidence building measures. Total trust is gone. Strategically, you may justify what Iran has done, and there is war strategy. But at the same time, all these countries who basically were against Trump going into and attacking Iran. Throughout. Even this time also, 2 days ago, 5 days ago, all the countries, Saudi Arabia, UAE and Qatar, called Trump not to attack Israel. Because that will directly impact. So what India is doing, like tomorrow all your countries, is Saudi Arabia, the UAE and others, if Iran is not saying that it is hitting those countries, but it is also disrupting all the supply chains for India. So you are not left with any options whatsoever. And you have to deal with your 1.45 billion people and supplies. So that's extremely important for us to see to it somehow that this war ends and stops right away. This has actually already gone too far. And the longer it goes, worse it will be.
But is there equity in terms of our relationships with Iran and Israel?
No, equally, ma'am.
No, 1 minute, I'm just making a point. We are, I understand, sending drones to Iran. To Israel. And there are agreements, defense agreements. Clearly, we are exporting some arms, we are buying equipment from them, including medicines and so on. It's very dicey stuff. Do we have similar arrangements with Iran?
Well, defense and security relationship with Iran has not been that strong. We used to have earlier, but over time it has not been there. Iran does not need. They are the champions in the missiles and drone technology themselves. They have been supplying to Russia for that matter. Even the Russia-Ukraine war. As far as supplies to Israel is concerned, and I'm the last person to defend Israel in this war, or any war for that matter. But I must say that as far as India is concerned, equity lies in your own national interest. This is the only country in the world that actually stood with you during your Operation Sindhu. Or whenever we had a terrorist attack, which country came up and stood with you? Nobody. That's the only country. And not only that, physically they were present here. their experts came and tried to help you. They provide you the latest technology. No other country does that. So if you are just reciprocating to that extent, I don't think there is any harm in it. I mean, we need to see things in a totality. And I don't at any point condone any kind of a war waged by anybody for that matter. But government position, the government people only can defend. I'm out of the government, so I don't really know exactly what is going on inside. I only read like from outside and try to analyze and give my experience in the past. Thank you very much. I'm so sorry I had to.
Thank you so much and hope to see you again.
Please carry on.
Thank you everyone. That is very wise. Yeshi, start over. Okay. So we're back to the panel, and I would request for you to discontinue with the same momentum. I think we finished one aspect of it, and we could have said that now we want to focus on India. So.
Thank you. Yes, I have finished that part. Now focus on India. Because of this war, as a fallout of what we are facing, as a fallout we are facing. And as we all know, that India is import-dependent country, energy import-dependent country, and in the years to come, it will remain so. If we have to now, I was just thinking that we are dependent on this many years and decades, and we are also there are efforts to diversify our oil sources. Somehow we are successful, and then the situation changed when this Ukraine war started in February 2022, and we started taking huge oil from Russia. Very recently I was checking that now we have reduced taking oil from Russia is below 20%. And as usual, other Gulf countries, Persian Gulf countries are there, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Iran, all these countries are there. And when we have seen this waiver, US waiver on Iranian oil, India also started taking oil from Iran after 7 years, after 2019. Now, it's not a question of that how this is the source of the supply. This oil has to reach us. So this Hormuz is there. Now we keep hearing from Saudi Arabia, and the ambassador also mentioned the alternative route from Bab al-Mandab and all. Okay, Saudi Arabia has been trying. Now if you check that exactly what happened after trying this alternative route. Saudi Arabia's oil export has been reduced, drastically, because this is a detour, then this is a price, and many other factors. Okay? So it is also impacted. So this alternative route, it is not that it will take either different types of alternative routes will take some years. Right now, what is already Saudi Arabia has been using, it has consequences. And as a result of that, Saudi Arabia selling less oil. Now, so far, in India's case, we had initial expected we have some cuts, but we are very proactive, I must say, the government, and we manage. But of course, we have been facing problems already. So you must say this petrol price hike, diesel price hike, LPG, and all these things. And another thing also, when we talk about this, 20% of oil comes from this knowledge, okay? In South Asia, okay, South Asia and Southeast Asia, it is not 20%. It is much beyond that. In general, it is 20%, and it is much beyond that. All the Southeast Asian, South and Southeast Asian countries, including India, China, South Korea, Japan, Taiwan, you just name it. Otherwise, it would not have been, just like that Philippines declared this energy emergency. So far now, what we are doing as a country, that very quietly, almost silently, we are negotiating. And you see the results also. All these ships are passing through, okay, on so many ships, and some with Indian flags, some with, not without a flag, but with different countries. But destination is India. We have seen this kind of thing in case of Iran's, the shadow plate. You never know that where this plate is going. So in case of India also we see two ships and buses. Otherwise it is passing through, and India is quietly negotiating. But the thing is that now I must say that in which we are facing the edge of it, okay, that this crisis is going on. But how long? If it continues, then we are going to face too much problem. We cannot get out of that. We are able to manage, we are managing things, and we are thinking that okay, this crisis will be over. Now it is 3 months. And you see what what Trump says today, tomorrow he will deny, and then after tomorrow he will say some other things. The thing is that, if we follow, although I don't follow Twitter, but with the statement we read, we will see that this person is so crazy, okay? But then, in his mind there is a method in madness, number one. But even in this method, this madness is not able to control oil market, because international oil market is a global oil market, okay? And it's the person, any individual, whosoever he or she is, thinks that okay, fine, I am the most powerful person, like Trump, I will control this oil and then oil price. No, it's not possible. That's why he is not able to do this. Since the war started, he did not think that it will continue that much. Okay, now it continues and continues and continues. Okay. So he thought that okay, fine. And another interesting thing, I think everybody is noticing this. This volatility of oil price, and not only the volatility of oil price, psychological volatility of oil price. You see the statement, you see some signs that, okay, there will be a final negotiation. This talk is very positive, okay, they are thinking, they are talking, and all these things. Then you see the price is down. And then when you will come to know that no, Iran is saying something different, okay? Like Trump said something else, then Iran said that no, Iran is denying, then again it will show up. So it is like this continuously, this thing, this is very interesting we are noticing. And at some point of time, we were checking this, that okay, this is Trump's statement, and then what is the oil price? After some time, we understood that no, this oil price is not listening to Trump. Okay? They are checking what Iran is saying. Okay? If Iran is saying no, we have not said that, we have not said, because Trump was saying anything and everything, we can be super leader, this, that, anything. Okay? So then they listen to Iran. What Iran exactly is saying? Iran is denying or Iran is denying? So now it is like this, that and that's why they were not able to continue. That's why we have seen this ceasefire on 8th of April. Then again this extension, then again this indefinite ceasefire. Okay. And within this indefinite ceasefire, we have seen that this US allowed Russia and Iran, okay, you sell this oil. So India started purchasing, and we have seen from the case of Russia also, Russia's oil going to Cuba. We have seen this. It is happening just like that. No, it is not happening just like that. Okay? Trump understood very well that his role, whatever is the policy, okay, because oil market has its own logic, okay, and whosoever supports or in line with that logic, fine, they will listen. If it is not, then it will behave in a different manner. So it is like this. I'm tempted to give this example of Charlie Chaplin's model buttons. Okay? You remember this? The buttons. Okay? They were doing this school work, and then this person whose worker was there, and the button also, because there was some other things, some other things. So it is like this. So oil market is also like this. Just like that, it cannot be controlled. Now, what we understand that Trump's policy is this, that Trump thinks that, okay, fine, it's very difficult because Iran retaliates. Okay, Iran retaliates, and there was a massive retaliation. They started with a massive retaliation. They started with, you know this Baidya doctrine. But now, what I could read, it is like this: let this ceasefire, continue, but time to time we will test the water. Okay, and if we are successful to what Israel was doing in Lebanon, maybe we are able to contain Iran, but it is not happening. The moment there was a ceasefire violation, Iran retaliated. The moment again retaliated. Today morning also I was reading this. The sun was attacking Bahrain's fleet, okay, and other places. Now, India is not directly involved in this war, but India has been suffering, okay, as a fallout, as a consequence. Okay. So I think here diplomacy should play a role. I am not saying that India should play a role of mediator. India should compete with Pakistan. Why Pakistan? Why not India? Not like that. What I am saying that this is a common thing. Like India, other countries are also suffering. You have to make Trump understand that you have to conclude this war. This is not this model of Ukraine war cannot continue. You cannot apply or reapply of this model. Fine, it continues beyond 4 years. So this also time to time it will continue. No, you cannot continue because all the countries are linked. All the countries are linked.
Can we give the opportunity to the members to ask the question?
No, I think this our message from our country, it should be loud and clear that we are not involved in war. Okay, it's not because of us that we are in war, but because of war as a consequence, we have been suffering, and we are import dependent country. Okay, we have to get our oil from other sources. For that, energy would be clear. Okay, so this war is not good for anybody. Okay, so from India, this message should be clear that no dilly-dally. You have to conclude. You have to conclude the war. You cannot continue this thing, and you cannot think that okay, fine, Russia is continuing Ukraine war over 4 years, so maybe that is another model we can apply here. No, this is a completely different scenario. That's what I was saying.
I was just thinking if Professor has, he done a summary of his thing. If he can, then we can take common questions.
So, let me make two very broad points and then come to the questions, so that you don't waste too much time. Because otherwise, we can keep going. It's a very vast subject. First point is data. I think there's a lot of fudging of data. So not only are we getting fudge data from abroad, but I think the government is also fudging data. As I said, if our imports of crude and gas came down by about average 25% in the month of March and April, and we continue to export 35%, then only 30% of food was available for internal consumption. So that was not enough to actually fulfill all the needs. But we continue to supply because we didn't raise the petrol and diesel prices. So we continue to supply that even though there were some restrictions on gas being used in various industrial production. But we continue. So in other words, how was that shortage being fulfilled? Obviously through the stocks of crude that were there in the refineries and with the government. Now that will get exhausted in about 50, 60 days, and we are now into 90 days. So therefore there must be some problem, and the government, last week said we have 60 days of crude supply. How can it be 60 days? The refineries keep 1 week of supply. Okay. So where did this 60 days figure come from? Is it on the ships? Where is it? So it can't be 60 days. There's just no way. So there is a problem with data. So I remember on News 24 in one program, the anchor was saying that we should have got 2,700 ships, and we got 270 ships. Okay. It also stands to reason, if you see, through the Strait of Hormuz, we were getting about 10 to 12 ships every day. So in 90 days, we should have got 900 ships. And we were counting, today 1 ship came, tomorrow 2 ships came. So we hardly got 20, 25 ships. So where did the other ships come from? Was it all Russian on the high sea? Was it Iranian on the high sea? So there's lack of clarity. So that's why both sides. I mean, while there may be data coming from somewhere which is sort of trying to create a panic, but there is a reason why people need to be worried. Because the government should come clean and should say, we should hold a meeting of all opposition parties and should say, okay, this is the actual situation. And this is the kind of crisis we are facing, and that's why we need to do this. The Prime Minister's austerity program and the program of import substitution. Why is that suddenly become necessary? If there's no problem with oil, if we were getting all the oil that we needed, why do we need all of it? There is some problem. I think the people don't know. And I think that people need to know that. So that's one problem that I see. Other problem is that we have the largest unorganized sector of any major country in the world. 94% of our workers are in the unorganized sector. And if you remember during the pandemic also, a survey conducted by the IWPC had shown that 80% of the workers said we don't even have 1 week of saving. If our job stops today, we can only survive for 1 week. That was precarious. And you can see what was happening. Gas was not available. If it was available, it was at 5,200 for a cylinder of 950. So 4,000 rupees extra. If you were filling the small cylinder, what was coming for 100 rupees a kilogram was coming at 400 and 500 rupees a kilogram. 4 to 5 times. There's black marketing going. Because the traders were taking advantage of this idea there is a shortage. So, my point is, an average worker in an unorganized sector, how much does it earn? The e-Shram portal gives you some data. E-Shram portal was set up during the pandemic. The Supreme Court scolded the government saying, how many people are there in the unorganized sector? You should know. So the government set up the e-Shram portal. In the parliament, the PM gave the number that 300 million are registered. And who are the people registered who have access to a computer? So the really poor cannot register. It's the better off of the unorganized sector. And initially the data was that 90% of them said we earned less than 10,000 rupees a month. And in Noida also, the workers said they are earning 10,000, 11,000, 12,000. But imagine for somebody earning 10, 11, 12,000, if you have to spend 3,000, 4,000 extra for gas, the budget is gone. How do you pay your rent? How do you then buy your food, etc.? So I have a Manish Raju from Johnson. He went to the village. He said, I can't cook. I don't have gas. Now when he went back, because this rural employment guarantee scheme was stopped, he didn't get any work. 10 days back he came back. He spent 3,000 rupees taking the family there and 3,000 rupees coming back. Okay? Because he didn't get work there. Imagine his entire budget is gone. So he got one cylinder for 5,200 rupees. He earns 11,000. So 4,000 rupees gone. He couldn't pay the tuition of his daughter to the school. Okay? His areas are piling up. And he's cooking only once a day. You can't cook twice a day because you will waste gas. So look at the precariousness of our economy. And this is a sector that has been hit hard. This is a sector which has lost work, which is the unorganized sector where the big hit is. Why? Because the big sector has enough capital. The small sector, the unorganized sector, has very little capital. And therefore, it exhausts its capital, shuts down. Therefore, a lot of workers from the unorganized sector have been going back to the rural area. But they are also there in a crisis. But at least there they can burn wood, they can maybe get some vegetables from the field and they can make food somehow. In the city, it becomes very difficult. So just like during the pandemic, large number of people started walking in the street, with their children on the shoulder and pulling the luggage and so on. Similar situation is happening. So look at the government data. The government says the inflation rate is 3.5%. That's the CPI, the consumer price index, right? What about this guy? He's paying 4,000 rupees extra on 10,000. His inflation rate is 40%. His inflation rate is not 3.5%. But government will not count that. In the CPI, you don't take the black price. So actual inflation for the poor people could be 20, 30, 40%. Even though the official inflation rate is only 3.5%. Similarly, the production that is stopped in the small and unorganized sector doesn't get counted in our GDP data. Therefore, government will not look at how much decline has taken place in the production in the economy. So actually, as far as the poor people are concerned, the economy is in stagflation. Stagflation means high inflation and stagnation in the economy. And if the situation continues and the jobs continue to go in the unorganized sector and the small sector, you will be in a recession. But the official data will not show the recession. So therefore, data is a huge problem. What is the actual rate of inflation? What is the actual rate of growth of the economy? RBI will take the government data and say this is the thing, RBI policy is coming, okay, in another couple of days' time. But they don't even get the official rate of 3.5%. They don't get the actual rate of inflation and so on. So therefore, when people say, what is happening about gold going up? Okay, that's one of the questions that came. As far as the RBI is concerned, it's 880 tons of gold that was there yesterday and that's here today. So officially they say gold is not there. But why? Maybe, you don't know the data. Why may it be going up? It is to show up foreign exchange reserve. Foreign exchange reserves are dropping because capital is not coming in on capital account. On the current account, it's going out. So both capital account and current account are somewhat negative. And that's why the foreign exchange reserves have dropped between March 1st and between May 15th, dropped by about $40 million. So when the foreign exchange reserves start going out rapidly, then the speculators speculate. Unfortunately, some of the free market economists say, let it go. What is the difference between 100 rupees or 99 rupees or 101 rupees? But the point is that if the value of the currency goes down, then it can go further down because speculators are speculating. And we have any number of such examples. Look at the contagion in Southeast Asia in 1997-98. The Thai baht collapsed. It was going down, and then Warren Buffett and other speculators global, they speculated and they made it fall. And 2 million Thai went below the poverty line. And Warren Buffett and company, they made billions of dollars. Okay. Similarly, look at the ruble. When the Soviet bloc collapsed, okay, the ruble sank and sank. What was $1 to ruble became $1 to 60,000 ruble when it was redistributed. So you know that international markets on currency can be very speculative and your currency can fall like a stone. And the implication of that for the poor is very high. Because all imported items become more expensive. Therefore, inflation kicks up. Okay? And that affects them. In Soviet Union, what happened was that the pensioners, their pension became nothing because the ruble sank so much, right? So there are all kinds of consequences that take place if the currency starts going down. And that's why the RBI is seeing to it that the currency goes down gradually. It doesn't sink very rapidly. So it's using its foreign exchange reserves to see that there is a sort of a glide path, which is a gradual glide path rather than a rapid glide path. And therefore, I would say to people to say, how does it matter if the currency declines? It does matter. If it has to go down, let it go down gradually rather than very rapidly. It should not be something that enables the speculators to speculate further and pull your currency down further because that has many other repercussions. Now, with all this, again the question of diplomacy came. Now, why is it India's weakness? India's weakness lies in our lack of enough R&D. We don't have technology. We are dependent on technology on Russia for our defense equipment, some critical items like S-400, Sukhoi. And by the way, I was the team leader of the committee that priced the Sukhoi in 2013-14. So I know a little bit about what the Sukhoi pricing and so is. So Sukhoi we need, S-400 and BrahMos. We can't give up on Russia. Even if America wants us to do, we can't. We depend on China. We have a $102 billion trade deficit with them. We get low technology items and high technology items. We get Pataka Banja, we get Diwali lights, we get Pichkari, we also get APIs for pharmaceuticals, we also get the automobile components, and a lot of our factories have now Chinese machinery. And when we stop giving visas, after this Dalman incident and so on, then Indian businessmen were telling government, please give them, otherwise our factories are not running. So we are heavily dependent on them. So this is the triad of China, Russia and the US, which is squeezing. So what diplomacy can we do if we don't have something around it? And that's why we are buffeted. Sometimes we do a bit of this, sometimes we do a bit of that. So why are we weak in R&D? That is because R&D environment is not created. Our institutions are very feudal. I come from JNU, which is supposed to be a good place, but you can see even feudal attitude there. In other universities, it's much stronger. And with a feudal attitude, you do not create a research environment. For any experiment to succeed, there's failure. You have to accept failure. Without failure, you cannot have success. And in a feudal system, you don't accept that. But orders come from above. Secondly, we don't spend enough on R&D. We are spending only 0.65% of our GDP on R&D. China spends 3%, USA spends 3%, South Korea spends 4% and 5%. Okay. So we are spending 3% and we are 1/5 of them. So China is spending 22 times more on R&D than we are spending. And the USA is spending 100 times more on R&D than we are spending. So we are way behind. And we can see this all around. Look at the MCA, the light combat aircraft. That is a G404 engine, and that's the 1980s technology. And then we want G414, that's a 1990s technology. And they're not giving it to us. And the G404 engine also they're not giving. We needed 100 engines, we got hardly 10. So the Air Marshal is saying, we're not getting enough light combat aircraft from the HAL, so HAL is not good. What can HAL do? We depend on the G404 engine. Similarly, the main battle plan has a Leopard engine. Why can't we develop our own engine? Our Kaveri engine for the light combat aircraft will work. It is another part. So we lack technology. And today's world, one who has technology will dominate. And we are being dominated. And now with the coming of AI, the situation is turning even more grim. Why is it that the American market is doing so well? Because in AI, all these technology companies are really moving ahead very rapidly. And therefore their stock valuations, NVIDIA and so on. NVIDIA is about $5 trillion, larger than our GDP. So this kind of thing is really moving so rapidly. And our technology companies are actually facing adversity. Because now AI will be used to do the work that our technology companies are supplying. You can do coding, you can actually maintain software, etc. in companies. You don't need human beings from India, from Diplomat, etc. So our technology companies' stocks are declining. Their technology companies' stocks have gone up, except in the last 2-3 months when it hasn't gone up that much. So the returns there are very high. And with the coming of AI, things are going to get even worse. Because AI is enabling a lot of technical technology development, all coding, software, even doctors also. For instance, I have a doctor friend in Ames who has developed an app 5 years back. You send him the picture of your skin and the app will tell you what is the problem and what is the medicine. You don't have to go to a skin doctor. A relative of mine has developed an app. He takes a picture of your forehead, puts the body mass index and something into it, and it tells you what's your BP, what's your sugar, etc. You don't have to go for tests. He said they are making it less accurate, otherwise doctors will stop using it. So we can make it very accurate, but we cannot make it very accurate till the doctors begin to accept it. So this is a complete, in technology terms, we are falling way, way behind. And that is our real weakness. That is why, you see, South Korea and others depend even more on oil than we do. But they are doing quite well. We are the ones who are suffering because they have technology. In technology terms, South Korea is way, in terms of development. So my point is that, when we talk about controlling inflation, we talk about, foreign investment coming into India, etc. These are the real factors. Technology is the key. If we fall behind in technology, we are going to fall behind in terms of what investment we are trying to do. Yes. So, as I said, if you take the actual data into account, we are into stagflation situation. The official data doesn't really represent what people are facing. So if we are in a stagflation situation, it's very difficult to control. Because if you try to curb inflation by raising interest rates, then your economy will come down further. Okay. If you try and say, okay, currency is going out, therefore let's raise the interest rate, that will be inadequate because the returns in the US market are far higher than that. So you might raise it by 1 percentage point or 2 percentage point, but there it is 10 to 12 percentage higher. So that will not work. So therefore, the RBI cannot do very much. It will probably just maintain the interest rate benefit. What can the government do? Government can take several steps because you see, energy is short. So production will be hit. And when production is hit, it means your capacity becomes less. So you will be producing less than what you could have produced. Right? Now, how do you optimize that? Right in March, I wrote an article. I said there are essential things in an economy and inessential things in an economy. You curb the inessentials, but you allow full energy use to the essentials. That will minimize the loss of output that you have. Okay? So make a distinction between essentials and inessentials. So for instance, I gave the example that you shift from private vehicles to public transport. The space in which a bus is, 2 cars. So in a bus there will be 30 people, in a car there will be 3 people. So 1/10 of transport will be required if you shift from private transport to public transport. So you can optimize the use of energy by doing something like this. Then, for instance, that liberalized evidence scheme can be stopped. Okay, liberalized evidence scheme, you lose $29 billion every year. So that will shore up your foreign exchange reserves. Right? Then the export of refined products, 35% which is going out, that will be stopped so that fuel is available for internal consumption. Then you have to depend on direct taxes rather than indirect taxes. Direct taxes are not inflation. Indirect taxes are inflation. So when people say that as far as petrol and diesel are concerned, about 40 rupees or thereabouts could be the VAT and the excise duty together. You can reduce that to keep the petrol and diesel prices from rising. But then you have to raise funds somewhere, and where you raise it, you have to raise it from direct taxes. So shift from indirect to direct taxes and then lower the indirect taxes say, on petrol and diesel so that their prices do not go up so much, and then that will be very inflation. So many such things have been taken, and black economy is curbing the trade, the black marketing. Trade has to be kept in check. If you don't keep trade in check, all shortages will be taken advantage of, and prices will be raised, and therefore inflation will go up. So trade has to be kept in check. If you don't do that, then you are going to lose it. Finally, black economy, if you check, then the flight of capital associated with black economy can come down. Your foreign exchange reserves will be much higher, you should be available. And then the gold also is linked to the black income generation. The gold that is held, part of it is held by about 5% of the population. poor people are too poor to even buy much gold. I mean, that really doesn't count. It's the 5% in the top income ladder, they are the ones who hold much of the gold. And the jewelers are saying that the sale is now taking place not of jewelry but of bars and biscuits. You see, jewelry is for use, whereas bars and biscuits are for investment. So why are they investing? Because the rupee is going down, so if they hold the gold in the bar and biscuit form, it's an investment as a hedge against inflation and the decline of the rupee. Right? So if that is happening, then I think we have to dissuade those with large black money to actually do that. And in that, the political parties have to play a big role, because the political leaders who are involved in the generation of that incomes, and if they can keep that in check. So in other words, there are many things that can be done for inflation, for various things. So why is the this investment climate down? It is, as far as foreigners are concerned, relative returns in India are much less than in the US. So they are trying to move there. Second is, in India, the investment climate is down because crony capitalism. Crony capitalism means there is no level playing field. If I like a firm that takes Ultratech, Ultratech is the biggest cement producer in India. It was going to buy from wholesale, the two firms, the ACC and the Ambuja Cement, very profitable company. The agreement was made, and the next day the agreement was broken, and these had to go to Arun. Now, if you don't have a level playing ground, okay, then businessmen are worried that if my profitable venture is there, and that gets taken over by them, so therefore a large number of the ultra high net worth individuals are leaving the country. So the data I remember from 2019, which came that between 2014 and 2019, 23,000 of the 250,000 ultra high net worth individuals left the country. And then in 2019, another 7,500 left. And 2022, another 7,500 left. So roughly 15,000 out of 250,000 ultra high net worth individuals have left. Which is only to show that the investment climate is very skewed. Second is, if your unorganized sector is not generating enough demand, then demand will be short. You can see that in 2019 we cut our corporate tax rate. Right? So we gave about 1.6 lakh crore extra profit to the corporate sector. What did it do with it? It did not invest it. It cleaned up its balance sheet. Okay. So therefore, companies are realized to be completely debt free. Okay, because they made enough profit. They got enough capital they raised during the pandemic. Right? So our corporate sector is now debt free. It has a very good balance sheet. Why is it not investing? Because the lack of demand. Capacity utilization, as I said, RBI's capacity utilization shows 70 to 75%. Now, if you can produce 100 air conditioners and sell only 70, why would you raise capacity to 110? So, if you raise capacity to 100 to 110 by investing more, the capacity utilization comes to 85 90.
So you see real estate prices coming down?
No. So, real estate is different. If you have surplus, you go into real estate. If you're not investing elsewhere, you go into real estate, right? So, earlier, you see, before 1990, the choice was between stock market and real estate. But now the choice of going abroad, there is other choices also, right? You can go into the stock market, you sit, you can do other things. So, if the stock market is very volatile, then it might go into real estate. So, you can't tell at this point whether it's in the real estate or whether it be a SIP. But I heard this paper yesterday in times that the SIPs have also come down. The people putting money into SIPs, that has also come down. And that's because I think people are worried. And when people are worried, what will they do? They'll go to gold. Right? They'll go to silver.
So they are likely to pump in money into real estate.
Because real estate is difficult to liquefy. Gold is very liquid. So when there's uncertainty, you go into gold. In fact, the interesting thing is that last year, dollar went down against most currencies, but the rupee declined into the dollar also. And gold shot. Why was gold shooting up? Gold was shooting up because all central banks have been moving towards gold. They are reducing their dollar holdings. Why? Because once the Americans put sanctions on Russia, every country thinks that tomorrow US can sanction us also. Therefore, shift out. China has been very smart. China diversified its trade. China also diversified its reserve holding. And therefore, it's been buying more and more gold. All central banks have been buying gold, and that's why gold prices have been shooting up for the last 2 years.
So gold since has become one of the major topics of this day.
tons. But the PIB has come with a fact check and it's claiming that the share of gold in India's foreign exchange reserves has in fact risen from 13.92% at end September 2025 to 16.70% on March 31, 2026 and further to 16.85% as of May 22. What do you make of this statement? I mean, here we have one report analyzing that in fact gold has been sold out and now the PIB is claiming that it has actually gone up, its share has gone up over the past 1 year. What do you make of it? Is it about fudging of data?
So, if that we cannot tell from outside, if data is being fudged, all we can do is we can point to the contradictions in the data. So, like you're pointing to the contradiction in data that makes you feel something is not right.
Yeah.
So, to analyze that, you have to go into greater details, right? Now, one thing is true is that gold prices went up. So, the amount of gold you have, its value went. So, its share in reserves will go up as a result. Dollar valuation also, the rupee declining, so the dollar valuation of the reserve also goes up, right? So, part of it could be that, and part of it could be.
But this remains suspicious.
I mean, if there are these contradictory reports, and Bloomberg would have also found something for them to make such a claim, right? So, one is confused between them. All one can say is one needs to do more research. One can't do an instant answer on that as to what exactly the correct situation. Sure.
I think last. So let's just take 3 questions and then because I think we really covered a lot of ground.
So the health of the economy can recover only if the MSME sector rise properly, giving the employment it always needs. That's the main source of employment rising. And the taxation and the corruption levels both have to be fixed for that. Would you agree that corruption is one of the major inhibitors to investment?
So can we take other questions also?
I'm very interested in your comments on crude oil. Now, my impression was that in the past, in recent times, you were buying Russian oil, and it was going to the Jamnagar refinery, and it was being processed, and we were selling it to Europe. So, if you're still sending out 30% of the crude refined, where is it going? None of it. Europe anymore. How? No hormones?
That comes from West Asia. But what goes to Europe can go to South Africa, I mean, like Suez Canal is still open. Suez Canal is still open. But given the rapid rise, about 50% rise in the prices, even the USA, as you know, is an exporter, yet the prices there have risen on the petrol and so on, right? So these prices have gone up and they were very profitable for private refiners to sell oil to Europe and wherever they can sell. So they have been making money. Okay? And I'm saying that actually accentuates our problem. And to answer your question, you see, the common mistake that we make is we lump MSME together. MSME is what? Micro, small and medium. Right? There is nothing common between micro on the one hand and small and the medium. It's a very diverse thing. There are 50,000 medium units as far as I know. There are 550,000, 5.5 lakhs of small units and 7 crore micro units. So of the MSME, 99% of the units are micro units. And they employ 97.5% of the employment of MSME. So we have to separate the micro from the small and the medium. All policies that are announced for the MSME go to the medium sector. They take advantage, micro gets nothing. So we have to separate them. And that's where the employment generation will be. It's the micro sector, the small sector that was hurt by demonetization, then GST, then NBFC, and then the pandemic. Right? So how do we protect the micro sector? The average employment in micro sector is 1.7. The government keeps saying we'll organize the unorganized. There's no way you can organize this 1.7. Can they do marketing? No. Can they do finance? No. Can they do technology development? No. So micro sector cannot become organized. You can only kill it. Similarly, in agriculture, 85% of farms are below 5 acres. They're small or marginal farms. Half acre, 1 acre, 2 acre farms. They'll never get organized. You can only kill the farms and convert them into laborers, right? So this is where the employment is. You should actually do that, you kill. So the problem that we have is how to generate national profit. And that can only be in agriculture and in the micro and the small farms. So therefore the government has come out in policy to support that. But what is the government doing in the budget? The government is supporting the capital-intensive sectors, not the labor-intensive sector. Where is it that you can have more labor employment, your rural employment guarantees, your education, your health, but these are the budgets that are cut. So therefore you are emphasizing, say like for instance, freight corridor, like big highways. But these are also highly mechanized now. Earlier on the road project you could see hundreds of people working, now the big bulldozer and JCBs take only you see 10 people working. So these highways and these railway freight corridors also don't give much importance. Right? But we are focusing on that. So therefore we have to re-change our policy towards supporting the employment generating sectors rather than the capital intensive. And the organized sector has enough money. Its balance sheets are very important. Once demand comes, it will automatically invest. And where will demand come from? From the micro units in the large number of agricultural workers and farmers. So you have to boost income there. So boost income there, demand will come, the organized sector will also start doing well. So I think when you say taxation and what is the other thing? Consumption. Consumption will come from these people. If you give a rich person 100 rupees, you're not going to spend anything. Maybe take one more vacation in Seychelles or something, right? Not doing it. If you give 100 rupees to a poor person, he'll buy chappal for himself, he'll buy something for the wife, something for the kitchen, something for the child, spend the entire time. So the more inequality you have, the less the demand. So if you reduce this inequality through your taxation and other policies, yes, it will boost demand in the organized sector also.
One small question, that is, our rupee has really gone down. How much do you speculate it to go down more?
That's a...
Excuse me, we just going towards Aam Aadmi ki very much ये समय कब तक ये कहाँ तक पहुँचे?
देखिए जितना रुपया गिरेगा वो 100 पहुँचेगा 100 में उस तरफ जाएगा वो तो स्पेकुलेटर्स डिसाइड करेंगे और स्पेकुलेटर्स उतना सक्सेसफुल होंगे जितना तेजी से हमारा रुपया गिरेगा. So if the rupee keeps falling rapidly, then but if the RBI keeps intervening in preventing a rapid fall, it may not fall beyond. Our real economy strength is not gone down so much, certainly. Certainly it has gone down, but not to the extent that it is pictured to be going down. So maybe 5% or 6% may be okay, but going down rapidly at a rate of about 24% per annum. That's because it's 5% only in the last 3 months, right? So if you project that, it would be about 24% per annum decline, and that's not something that India has lost as yet. So it's a speculative thing. Like I said, in the contagion in Thailand, in South Korea in 1997-98, in the Indian economy in 1989-91 also the rupee collapsed, in Soviet Union also, but you have various examples. So we should prevent that kind of a collapse by seeing that the rupee doesn't go down rapidly. So that's my thing. And therefore it all depends on whether the RBI continues to support the rupee. Even if foreign exchange reserves keep going up, we still have about $680 billion of reserves, which can last for quite some time. So we should continue to follow that. See, I'm not one of those who say, let the rupee find its own level. You may not find a level, it may just drop below the floor. Your question about the poor and about how to. So, as Ambassador Trigunayat correctly said, we don't know when the agreement will come. Why is it that the agreement is not coming? Because the objective of Israel, USA, and Iran is not coming. Iran says we not sacrifice our sovereignty. We will not say we will not develop this uranium, enriched uranium. We are not going to give it up. But for the US president now, at this point, that's become a critical. Because he lost out on other things. He said, "Do hafte mein khatam ho jayega, nahi hua." He said other things, nahi hua. So President Trump wants that. Iran is not willing to do that. Iran is not willing to accept bombing by Israel in Libya and Lebanon. And Israel is going on attacking Lebanon, left, right, and center. And Iran's reputation will go down if it allows this to continue in Lebanon. So there are differences which do not look like you can fathom them easily. Maybe in the backside you may be able to get to some agreement, etc. But openly, I think it will be very difficult. So if this situation continues, then the shortage of energy will persist. And if the shortage of energy persists, then as I said, this stagflationary situation will spread in India. And it might move into a recessionary situation where the production begins to go down. Okay? And that will be very detrimental to employment, that will be very detrimental to the organized sector. धीरे धीरे बंद होगा जा रहा है, and it might ज़्यादा और बंद हो जाएगा. As I said, it's coming from multiple sources. आपका पैकेजिंग इंडस्ट्री, प्लास्टिक इंडस्ट्री, फार्मास्यूटिकल इंडस्ट्री, ये सब इफेक्ट हो रहा है. जहाँ गैस इस्तेमाल होता है मोरबी में, वहाँ पे टाइल्स कम बन रही हैं. गुर्जा में जहाँ पे सिरेमिक होता है, वहाँ पे सिरेमिक कम बन रहा है, वो भी गैस से होता है. फिर आपके जब इंजन जब वो कार जब प्लांट होता है, उसमें जो पेंट शॉप होती है, उसमें भी आप गैस इस्तेमाल करते हैं, वहाँ कोयला आप इस्तेमाल कर सकते हैं. एंड वेरियस थिंग्स. So production slowly will begin to get impacted. The demand will get impacted as the poor people's demand goes down, as they face greater this thing. So what is it that the government can do? Production will go down, but optimize. Like I said, I think you were afraid. I said it has to optimize between what is essential and what is inessential. Cut back on inessential. Provide less energy there. Because this is sonar. Sonar is an inessential. Gold is an inessential. So sonar का जो job पे जाएगा, if you curb that, उसको आप provide करेंगे मदद. But if you cut back on food, if you cut back on clothing, that will be very inflation. So don't cut back there. Cut back on the essential. Cut back on 5-star culture and 7-star culture. That's not so critical for the society. But don't let the essentials come. So I think the government will have to optimize. It is not yet done. The optimization strategy is very essential. The LRS scheme has to be stopped. Various such things, various essentials. That's true. So gas shortage so it has to find alternatives to that as to how these people can be given alternative to the electricity or something else. But some of these things will be inevitable. So that we'll have to find. But as far as possible, separate the essential from the inessential. Allow enough energy for essential, but reduce the energy availability for essential. That's the broad thing, and within that we can work out what we should do.
I think we need to take one. I also have one question.
Doctors, you talked about the fish meat when donated the gold. So, what do you think? Why they donated only for the Iran and not for the other? What is the reason behind this?
Kashmiri people, they have very close emotional bond with Iran. Okay, I think that is the result. Apart from this, they highly regard the leaders. There are a lot of people, they go to Iran to study medicine. They have close connections. They have close connections. Their views, their perspective about Iran is completely different.
I was reading somewhere, Professor, that the countries in South Asia who are dependent on oil, they are not collectively bargaining, coming out with a regional or a collective voice to for better terms, given whatever the war scenario is. So each country is trying to do it unilaterally with the US, with Iran, even with Israel now. So they're kind of they're scattered. So do you, and this is a question to both of you, that when we are talking about what else needs to be done, because this has gone a little beyond the scope of this discussion, but it's a logical question. What can we do best at the policy level and every other level, the economic level, policy level, especially diplomatic level, strategic level. So what would you say to that? And focus it both of you.
Yes, South Asian countries and Southeast Asian countries, they are highly dependent on the Persian Gulf oil. Starting from India, China, Japan, Korea, South Korea, Taiwan, you just nailed it. But you are absolutely right. Okay? They are, it is like bilateral relations, bilateral relations. They have a decent problem because when war started, this South Korean people, their economies, they are 100% they are feeling that they are going to face a lot of problems. So they are not thinking, till that they are not thinking that collectively they should do something and they put pressure and all these things. No, we have not seen any effort on their part. That is there. And because it's like bilateral relations. They are taking oil from this country, so then you will see another country, different confederation, China taking more oil from Iran. India just started taking the oil. Japan is highly dependent on Persian Gulf oil. South Korea also, all these countries. They have not thought about it. So, that is there. I think we should wait for that. We should take some corrective.
So, I mean, the bargaining power will naturally reflect that.
Yeah.
So, you are absolutely right that we've been going for bilateral rather than multilateral. Right? That was evident also for tariffs. If we all bargained together, we would have put America down and we would have got better terms. So, WTO -1 would have been one strategy that we would have adopted, but we didn't. Why? Because each nation thinks better than neighbor. I will get better terms than the other will get. I will get more strategic relationship with the America than Bangladesh will get. I will get lesser tariffs than China will get. That's better than neighbor. It's part of the bilateralism. If we thought about the multilateral thing, on tariffs also we could have done better and here also. But here is the difference. The shortage that is there, prices will rise. The only question is, will it be same price rise for everybody or will it be different? So our food basket price is quite high. Because we are almost 90% of our food comes from outside. We only produce roughly 10%. So our dependence, South Korea, Japan dependence, we are very heavily dependent. We are in a weaker bargaining position than others if we have a lesser dependence on outside. So India should have taken a lead. I know last year also when the Trump started in Paris, I said India, Japan, EU, and China. If we take the lead and we create WTO -1 in USA, we can all get better terms. USA will withdraw its tariffs very quickly, but we didn't do that. So they are not doing that.
Thank you, Professor Sima and Mr. Kumar. काफ़ी इंफॉर्मेटिव सेशन रहा और हम लोगों को काफ़ी जानकारी मिली और अभी भी हमें लगता है कि काफ़ी जानकारी हो गई है जो हम चाहते हैं आपसे, लेकिन टाइम की अपनी लिमिटेशंस हैं। आपको बताएं हमको नवाजा इतनी देर जानकारी से अभी चाय के लिए आपको सब निमंत्रित हैं और हमारे साथी भी सभी लोग और हमारा डिजिटल वो है उस पर आप जाते हैं
small these are our
इकोनॉमिक हमारी
and sisters
go that way.